To start off today, I'd like to invite you all to maybe sit back, close your eyes for a second, and think about somebody who has influenced your life for good. Somebody who's had a positive impact on you. Now that you've had a chance to think, and you can continue to think about it as I talk today, but the purpose of my thoughts today are centered on the power of positive influence. As I share about somebody who's impacted my life positively, I want you to think about this person, these individuals. Obviously, we've all had people who have had that positive impact on us. But just the same, each of us can be influencers of good ourselves on those that we interact with on a daily basis. The man I want to share and talk about today is a man that I've never met. We share the same birthday and even the same last name, and that man's my grandpa, Dick Ruby Mortensen. I find it fascinating that even though I never met this man, the way that he lived and the person that he was and the true character that he held has shaped who I am today and motivates me to try to become better each and every single day. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit about who he was, as well as 2 ways that he's influenced me for good. To start off, a little bit about my grandpa. He was born on December 16th, 1922, just 4 months after his own father passed away. This means that my grandpa was never able to meet his dad. Eventually, his mother remarried, and my grandpa grew up in a blended family of 17 kids. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of mouths to feed, and especially during the time of the Great Depression in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Obviously, you can imagine it was pretty hard. And growing up in central Utah, where there's nothing but very small towns and farms and some more farms, my grandpa grew up in very humble circumstances. As you can imagine, this was difficult, but it did provide the opportunity for my grandpa at a young age to learn incredible work ethic and how to work hard. That's something that was shown very evident throughout his life, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, skipping ahead a few years, my grandpa enlisted in the military and served in World War II in the U.S. Navy. The top left or the top right picture is of him actually in the Naval Academy. And after serving in the North Pacific, I believe it was, on an aircraft carrier for some time, he eventually moved back home to central Utah, where he met my grandma, fell in love, and started their family by moving to a very small town in McGill, Nevada. It's okay if you've never heard of it. I didn't know where it was either. And where it was a mining community, and my grandpa worked in the mining industry for some time. It was very, very hard work conditions and not the best situation for their family. So eventually they moved back to Utah, where my grandpa worked in the steel production area of work at a place called Geneva Steel. I don't know too much about steel production myself, but I do know that it was incredibly demanding, both on the body and mind, and it was something that took a toll on my grandpa's health. He was balancing that job, working every single day, extreme hours, which was extremely exhausting, as well as balancing another job of working at a Chevron gas station on the nights, and then as well as in his free time on the weekends and anytime he could, building and remodeling homes for others. When asking my dad about what this was like growing up with a father who was so busy, imagining that he'd never be around, my dad said that he didn't really notice much, because my grandpa would spend any and every moment possible with his children, with his family, the people that mattered most. He'd take time, even if it was just building homes, to be able to teach my dad and his siblings lessons, life lessons, not just on how to build a house. Skipping ahead a few years, at the age of 60, my grandpa was diagnosed with an incurable disease called scleroderma. Those of you who don't know what that is, it's the hardening of the soft tissue in your skin. They call it the turn into rock disease, it's another term for it. But needless to say, it's very deadly and incurable, and that's what took my grandpa's life at the age of 63 in the year 1987. That was 12 years before I was ever born. So how did a man who passed away 12 years before I was ever even here play an impactful role in my life? Well, first, the first way that I can think of is that he lived by the motto of anything worth doing is worth doing right. It's very evident in the way that he built homes. You can still drive by any home that he built in Utah County and see that it's still standing and it's still beautiful. That's because my grandpa took such good care of, even from the foundation down to the very finished work of the ceiling or the floorboard, whatever it was. As well as another motto he lived by was to not take life too serious. I love looking at the picture of him smiling, a little grin even, and understanding that my grandpa knew how to laugh. He knew to have a good time. And it's been able to be evident in my dad's life and down to me to know to take life each and every single day and enjoy every moment. My grandpa didn't know that he was going to pass away at the young age of 63. None of us could have predicted that. But the way that he lived his life I find fascinating, because he lived to enjoy every moment. He lived to make other people happy. He lived to bring joy to others. I hope you've all been able to somewhat get an image of who my grandpa was by looking at pictures and by being able to hear a little bit about him from me today. I know that each of us can play that positive impact that my grandpa had on me, on others. So I invite you to think about the person that played that role on you, those individuals, and if they're still around, thank them. And if they're not, like my grandpa, the best way that I can imagine to do that is to try to be an example to others and to play that same positive role for somebody else. My invitation to you is to figure out how you can do that. Who will you become, and what will be your legacy?